Hello, Uganda. Good evening and welcome to the show On the Spot. My name is Patrick Kamara. It is hard in times like these to have members of parliament attend some functions or even be in Kampala. Why? Because it's that time of the year and that time in our constitution that is scheduled for them to be in the constituency looking for votes. Because yes, they are trying to explain themselves to the people, to dazzle them so that they can give them a mandate to lead. But for me to be able to have two members of parliament tonight on this show, one from down in Kisoro and another one from here in Kyadondo, is a plus, because these are gentlemen who probably could say have taken a break even before nomination to come and be able to discuss matters of national concern. And so let me introduce my guest this evening. From Kyadondo East constituency, I have the Honorable Muwada Nkunyingi. Thank you so much for joining us, Honorable Muwada. Good evening, sir.
Good.
And from Kisoro in Bukimbiri constituency, I have Honorable Kwizera Eddie Wagahungu. Thank you for joining us.
Kamara and listeners. Good evening.
You know, you have reached this moment when I can imagine, gentlemen, you probably going back to your constituencies to again talk to the people to hire you again for the next 5 years. And for many, it's a challenging moment. For some who have worked so hard, it's easy. I wonder, Honorable Nkunyingi, on your side, the people of Kyadondo East, will they hire you again?
Good evening to countrymen and women, and to my bosses, voters and friends, the people of Kyadondo East constituency. First of all, I'm from the constituency right now, and I've been undertaking various community engagements. I have trust and confidence in their assurances that they are voting me again as their member of parliament. But in principle, I want also to first thank my party, the National Unity Platform, for a fair process that saw me emerge as the flag bearer for Kyadondo East constituency. It was a very vigorous process involving vetting and ground assessment, the community assessment. So I trust that the voters, when reached out by the NUP,
so it's
they were all positive.
Its fairness is in choosing you, right?
Well, as a person, I would say it is also a good gesture and fair. But in terms of the process, it was a multiple approach that involved the vetting. We appeared with several others. And as well, they also did ground assessment, not only in my area, but also in all constituencies within this country. I appreciate that the voters had their say, and my party trusted the voters' voice, and I'm a flag bearer. And of course, together with the several others who emerged as victors, but as well, we also take on the views of all those who are competing with us. We take on the views, we appreciate their views, and we shall also amplify their views in our service delivery. But in terms of my people, I trust that the people of Kyadondo East constituency will vote me again.
But your Honorable Muwada, you know, for lack of a better method and a better modus operandi, you could have done better using another method that could deliver real democracy in choosing a representative who's going to run in the general election. This is not a robust democratic experiment you did, is it?
It also depends on the country you are faced with. As the National Unity Platform, you would appreciate that we have had a series of challenges orchestrated by the regime and assisted by the Electoral Commission at some times. You know how NUP tried very much to amend its constitutional provisions. They filed a constitution with the Electoral Commission, and the EC hasn't acted even to date, where we had proposed a number of changes. So operating under those circumstances with the operation, I believe most times the party has been in courts of law. People can sue up to the level of suing a word, people power. So our party attacked at various occasions. Even when we resumed to opening of regional offices, the party could not even open regional offices. But now, operating under those circumstances, we could not let it go. As a party, they had to devise other legitimate means within the electoral process and within our laws. And by the way,
I'm challenging the democratic process he used. Only using the words that have come from your own members who have poked holes in the system that was used in giving you the flag, especially those who were denied the flag?
Like who?
Jonebo Segona.
Of course, whoever speaks must account for their own opinions. I would only amplify the position of the party and the processes followed, that indeed there was a vetting process where we all appeared before a panel, a very technical and fair panel. After the panel, they did ground assessment. Whatever the results, since there were very many competitors, they ought to be voices of dissent and discontent.
But ultimately,
everyone wanted to be a winner.
Ultimately, you can consider, Honorable Muwada, that this is due to lack of a better alternative.
No, I don't want to use your own words that conceding. I believe the party used the most legit process available in the circumstances.
In the circumstances, this is what you can do.
Because in the circumstances where the regime has been cornering and ensuring that we don't perform, you can, for example, see now, they have been making a lot of rhetoric. Join iPod. When the party wrote to join iPod, you see how they're now rotating and changing tongues. So in this regime, as the National Unity Platform, a legitimate opposition party, we operate under very tricky situations. And I want to thank and appreciate my party that amidst all this, they have navigated at all times and taken very decisive positions. And here we are. We have flag bearers across the country.
Right. Thank you. Let me come to you, Honorable Eddie Kwizera wa Gahungu. The people of Bukimbiri, I'm sure, are waiting for you, but are you going back to ask them to send you to Kampala again to represent them? And you think you'll be hired again?
Yeah, thank you very much. But first and foremost, is that this Parliament is 5 years, and 5 years are ending in May. But the process of replacing members of Parliament started some months ago, and we are there participating, and we shall be sure, I'm sure I will come back.
Let us want to look at that moment when, after nomination or even before nomination, because a lot of work is still on. Like you have said, truly, you are still a member of Parliament until May 2026. How does Parliament turn its work around, especially now that you have so many competing demands, including renewing your contract?
Of course, you see that the incumbents are under threat because their seats are being grabbed, maybe. But it depends on how a member of Parliament has been performing and how individual parties do choose the individual members to hold their flags. Of course, if you see in Uganda, as the Honorable Muwada is saying, what is in public, there is the theory, there is the law, there is the practice. In most of these political parties, what they desire in accordance with the law is not the practice. And because the practice is different from the law and the theory they talk about, it yields into having so many divergent views leading to independence. That's why the number of independents is likely to keep on growing, because in many parties you find that the internal mechanism, some of it could be democratic, others may be acceptable within the organization, which is okay, but how democratic and how transparent is it? That's what, and does it meet the test? So the laws of Uganda, where they are lacking, is where they fail to set a standard, or that all these parties, although they are organizing themselves internally, but what standards do they have to meet? You find that in different parties, they are having, like in NRM, you have one man, one vote in the primary elections. But that one man, one vote contradicts the national elections laws, where they say a secret ballot. So now already there is a contradiction. If you are preparing for elections where you are going to have general elections of a secret ballot, lining up, although you are saying it is going to be transparent, but it intimidates some people not to participate in elections. meaning that some people will shy away from voting because maybe corruption, maybe they are fearing their friends. So they are not exercising their democratic rights from the internal, they are not practicing or demonstrating their democratic rights because they are subjected to fear. But when you go to other parties like NUP and the others, they will wait and say the flag is given. They have the internal mechanism. But so why would we have one country, one constitution, one electoral Parliamentary Elections Act, and the foundations of these people coming to participate in Parliament are divergent. So it means that
Honorable Muwada can explain that, because he talks about the circumstances, isn't that, within which you're operating, that if the ground was fair and leveled and nobody's going to interrupt with your system, you would really want to have a secret ballot, wouldn't you?
And actually...
And which is transparent.
Yeah.
It's very interesting on how he is selective on discussing NUP where he doesn't belong. But for information, the National Unity Platform processed even current members of parliament under a similar arrangement in 2020. The entire team of sitting members of parliament were processed through a vetting process. I personally attended and participated. So it shouldn't be new. And it has been part of our process and legitimate process under our old or current constitution. The party had moved on to amend its constitution, now to create multiple avenues and also to assist it establish organs up to grassroots level. Initially, the party has been operating using ad hoc committees. We used to call them Kunga committees at various levels, ad hoc structures, and had made efforts to establish firm and permanent structures within its constitutional order, which required initially amendment. The party deliberated and dedicated efforts on amending its constitution. I remember sitting in some of the meetings where the constitution was eventually passed as a member of parliament and as a caucus member of the NUP caucus. Eventually, the party constitution was filed with the Electoral Commission, which had now proposed various changes in our internal party systems as well. Unfortunately, the Electoral Commission, in connivance with the regime, failed NUP. They did not only fail us in terms of the constitution, but also in terms of our other party activities and regional or ground mobilization. Now, as we approach 2026 election, we are not made to miss out, because we, as a dedicated team, it is resolved to enter this electoral process as a protest vote. We are going to engage various unique strategies that will surprise not only the regime, but even the sympathizers of the regime, because we are deliberate on taking power and returning power to the people. Our principal focus is on how we can now consolidate the constitution of the Republic of Uganda, so that the people are empowered again to decide for their own country. These other positions are not our deliberate intention. We are not aiming at members of parliament, local governments. We are deliberate and targeting the top seat, the head of state of this country. You saw what happened even in youth elections. Whether you process in any way or in whatever way, this regime has been conniving with established structures, including the Electoral Commission. So we have failed in terms of amending our constitution to date, but I believe the party will continue in its pursuit to make electoral changes within our constitutional order. But needless to say, the process followed and used by the party is also legitimate and provided for within our party documentation and constitution. So it is also a legit process we used, and whoever was willing to submit him or herself to the party processes did so. And our target now is on the national electoral process, okay, and how we can effectively push to ensure that we realize the established constitutional order as provided for within the 1995 constitution as amended. This other background noise is just diversionary.
Honorable Muwada, as you target the number one position, the presidency, which is a good thing to have a target and a mission and work towards it, when I take you back to the youth council elections, that are nationwide elections, I wonder what your participation, your performance was like, because that gives you probably a pointer to where you can be, because Uganda is largely a very young country. Actually,
as we approached this 2026 election, we decided to participate in all electoral processes. Yes. Because even as we pursue regime change and regime change, we want to pursue it legally and lawfully within the established constitutional framework. We participated fully, and we mobilized the youth in this country to participate in youth elections. And I recall also participating within Kyadondo East constituency at various levels. Wherever our candidates were successfully nominated, we won. And wherever elections were held, in terms of youth elections, the National Unity Platform actually won. Yeah, but of course, we reported
over 80% of national youth leaders are NRM.
We reported instances where the Electoral Commission officers, in connivance with the regime and the claimed ghetto structures, deliberately refused to hold the elections. There are so many places where there were no elections. Okay. There were deliberate attempt to pronounce what they call the results. But wherever there were elections,
I wanted to point to that constituency because it's big and representing an entire nation, and the performance, the numbers you have are not encouraging.
The National Unity Platform is on record filing claims and concerns with the electoral body that these special interest groups elections, including the youth elections, were marred with various irregularities. But we identified connivance of the regime and the electoral body.
All right.
And that's why we are demanding for a very open, transparent electoral process when it comes to the national election.
You've made your point, sir. Let me come back to Honorable Kwizera. I think he makes a point that, look, the connivance of the regime and the Electoral Commission make it hard for them to use a better alternative in electing their leaders. Surely you can understand that.
Yeah, but you see, in Uganda, choosing of leaders, election of leaders, it still has some element of individual merit. And secondly, as talking about the youth, you must have capacity to participate. Capacity means you must also have resources, which is now a no common practice. So when you talk about the youth to participate in elections and win, that capacity is mainly related to resources and capacity to mobilize. So it may not necessarily be that the government is maybe the government in power, but those who have resources, because it is not only capacity to participate, but that capacity must be backed by resources required. And of course, the individual merit is also very important. So I think that to analyze why different youths in different parties lost, you have to look at the individual merit element about it and the capacity in terms of resources and capacity to mobilize countrywide.
But you keep talking about resources. We've seen resources or money being used in the NRM primaries in a way that you could say it's quite repugnant. You find people being given money, 2,000, 1,000 in a line, and what you saw in Kololo, money being used in that manner. Is that the way how resources should be used? Those are the kind of resources you're talking about?
The element of elections in Uganda and the use of money is not new. It has become now a culture or a tradition. So you cannot question.
Honorable Kwizera, I'm expecting you to tell us how the situation ought to be, not how it is.
No, you see the situation in Uganda where you have people motivated to vote because of what they are given money.
You want to conform with it, right?
We have been advocating that there should be rules to regulate the campaign financing. In Uganda, we don't have campaign financing. If we had rules to regulate the amount of money to be used, and even for people to account that you are going to put in about 200 million, 100 million, but can you account for that money? Where did you get it from? Or was it an income? If it was an income, did you pay, do you have a corresponding tax file? But here, people left it. So there is unchecked corruption in the elections. A bribe, actually. And where it is at times it is also baptized. that how do we spend money? How do we explain? Now the law says a candidate can buy lunch, a candidate can pay transport, a candidate can buy mineral water for for the voters. So you can say now it is legally covered. But unless Uganda establishes or puts into place regulations to do with campaign finance, so that when you say you are going to use money, you must explain why you get money.
So can we say the NRM party that has majority members in parliament is unwilling to bring such a legislation?
You see the element of why should we have everybody running to have in elections? Eh? You have to ask yourself, when they declare that we are going to have elections, you find that many people have resigned their jobs, even the professors and medical doctors and engineers. They are resigning to go and participate. Why? It has a relationship with the pay disparity in government. So if the professors were being paid adequately, because when they go there, I think members of parliament are paid better than the professors. So many people are not coming for service. Actually, if you use the 80-20 theory, you find that 80% of the people going to politics are going in for employment and the resources.
So, Honorable Wagahugu, why is it that when you sit here and you make a lot of sense, but then you cannot make sense to fellow members of parliament to bring a legislation that can actually cure that problem that you see?
But you know there is democracy. I can be one, another people may not support it. And of course also, some of these legislations must come from government, because they have a bearing on the on the national budget. So even if the government now knows that the burden of having elections in relation to the amount of money used is an issue that the government should come out and do research about. So why should someone pay 300 million, 400 million to go to occupy an office, even the LOC 5, where they get little money, or even the cancer, even the LOC 1s are now paying money to go to offices when they are not salaried.
Yeah, including the executive members of the Central Executive Committee. In fact, we are spending billions, I suppose. Even took people on a trip.
So what was the motivation?
On trips. These are your colleagues you sit with. These are the people you share ideals, I suppose. But Honorable Muwada, the issue of money in the Kyadondo East, is it of concern to you, or you think people are on board?
First of all, I have not come across any law in the current legal framework that permits use of money or bribery in an electoral process, even in the current legal regime. You know, the basic challenge of our country is not necessarily the lack of laws. It is the willingness to implement even the existing laws. Now, within the current legal framework, there is no room for bribery. If a fair and legitimate electoral process was to be followed, there's no room for that. There's no room for such use of money. And we even hear it basically in NRM. Because in terms of opposition, our campaigns is idea-centered. And when you look at, for example, the current trend of electoral process and campaign, our presidential candidate moves, people come willingly to welcome him, people travel from their homes to go to attend campaign rallies on their own. We only hear it and see it in NRM, where you see buses feeding people, people cooking food, a lot of people distributing yellow t-shirts to entice people and money, to entice people to attend those rallies. And they have reached a level of even now telling schools to close and transport children, school-going children, both the primary and secondary, to attend NRM rallies. It's very absurd. And that's why they end up in need of resources. Unfortunately, they are using public resources, not even their own resources. But in terms of the electoral process, even when you look at the party primaries, the National Unity Platform conducted a very free process. No single candidate paid any money to be nominated or processed as a candidate within the National Unity Platform. We had it in NRM, people paying a lot of money, and other parties, what they call the fees within the party structure. Ours, no. But as well, when it comes to the existing legal framework, it doesn't allow it. This NRM regime and operatives and sympathizers do it deliberately, thinking with a lot of impunity. It's a challenge, and that's why we must reclaim this country. So we return to the rule of law. If we are to operate within the existing legal framework, there wouldn't be such need. When it comes to individual parties, the law allows them to access resources in various ways, which are provided for within the Political Parties and Organizations Act. The allowable means of getting resources for normal operational programs. And you have also seen, in terms of accountability, that for the last 4 years of NUP, it can show accountability even for the resources it receives publicly. They have opened party offices. We have the headquarters in Kavule. We have a regional office in Uganda, in the east. We have a regional office in Mbalala and other areas. So it's a very transparent party. Even the little resources it receives is utilized publicly and on allowable projects. When it comes to the NRM, they have chose to use public resources, because these resources are never accounted for, towards their political party mobilization. And of course, instances of bribery have been reported. Who to investigate? Police is also in connivance. The military is in connivance. So we even lack who to investigate. And that's why, for us, we are approaching this 2026 electoral process as a protest vote. We want to reclaim this country. We want to return to the rule of law. We want to return to democratic governance and reclaim democratic values, so that there is sanity in whatever we do. And the problem, even the umpire, the referee, which would be the electoral commission, has failed to act. Okay. And in some instances, it has been cited in connivance.
All right, there are two things I'm going to pick on, and then maybe I can bounce them off the Honorable Kwizera. The issue you're saying, it, and I want to agree with you. If you follow the law that we have, it's good enough for us to be able to have a better country, better running of affairs, even better campaigns. Just use what we have. Unfortunately, we are not even following the law, and that some of the resources you do have is abuse of public resources. How would you respond, Honorable Kwagahungu, that there has been an abuse?
First of all, I am here to analyze what is there and the coming elections. I am not here as a spokesman of any party or not even an NRM. So the views I have are my only views based on the knowledge I have. So, but what I know is that corruption in elections and voting based on what has been financially motivated and resources need to be checked legally. So the laws we have are not sufficient, because the laws that we have don't provide for regulating campaign financing. Because in campaign financing, you, as a candidate, you would declare, I want to become an MP, and I will use so much. Then you will be regulated to see how much you are using it and where. But when people are bribing, they don't go to the media and say, I am going to pay so much. All these parties pay. But because you have not seen them pay, there is no evidence, then you say they are not paying. The fact that they pay and you don't know they are paid, or they do it undercover, does not mean they don't pay. I am a member of parliament and a senior at that level. I know that political leadership, many of them who participate, they participate with the requirement that you must have sufficient funds. And where do you get the funds from? And where do you spend it? So I still insist that the laws we have lack or short of campaign financing laws or regulations.
Isn't that the reality, that each one of you, whether you are NUP, UPC, DP, or
you have to pay.
You're putting in money. Only that somebody puts much more. And if you hide it, you do the same.
You know, the simplistic thinking of NRM and its sympathizers is to think of making a law on everything, even duplicating the laws. Now, I want him to quote any law that allows bribery in electoral processes. We have had court cases where people's elections have been nullified on such grounds. Bribery, even donating gifts. No, the law is very elaborate when it comes to misuse of resources and use of money and items to bribe or to influence an electoral process. The law, as it is now, exists. And we have also seen cases where evidence has been tabled and electoral processes has been cancelled and nullified. And that's why I'm insisting that the will by the existing regime, and most of these vices, as mentioned, are actually done entirely and solely by the NRM. And that's why we only want to uproot it and remove it from power. So when we return to civilian rule and with pure democratic governance, with the due respect to the law, we wouldn't be witnessing all this. Otherwise, they would dream of making a law every day and time, even without implementing the existing ones. I talked about the Electoral Commission. As the custodian of the electoral process, they are normally silent when these vices happen, especially within the electoral process. As we speak now, we have so many concerns. I don't know if you have reached there. We have so many concerns on how the electoral process is being managed. The Justice Byabakama and his team are still silent on some of obvious concerns, public concerns. There's out of concern within the public and political players and actors, including candidates. Okay. So, I would strongly say that issues of bribery, use of money, we hear it in NRM. But for us who are amplifying ideas and values, people are free and yearning to identify themselves with what we advocate for, with what our party president, His Excellency Kyadondo Robert, is advocating for, and we shall insist on that, on trading ideas. We recently launched a manifesto that will address all this we are talking about.
Would you want to respond before we take a quick break?
No, what I would want to respond to is that majority, or if not all, members of parliament and other people who are citizens of good conduct do participate in community development programs, which include fundraising, raising funds for development, and they pay individual money. So where do you draw a line from the campaign financing for intended to gain or recruit support from being a member of parliament?
All right.
Where do you draw the line?
Honorable Kwizera, Honorable Muwada, gentlemen, we're going to take a break, and on the spot we'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching On the Spot. My name is Patrick Kamara. My guest this evening, I have Honorable Muwada Nkunyingi, Member of Parliament for Kyadondo East, and Shadow Minister of Foreign Affairs. Also have Honorable Eddie Kwizera Wagahungu, Member of Parliament for Bukimbiri County. Yeah. Now, gentlemen, I want now to look into how is this season of campaigns as you go for nomination 23rd and 24th, how is it likely, Honorable Muwada, to affect the parliamentary work? How did it impact?
First of all, before I answer that one, allow me just quote our NUP manifesto priority number 1. It is to restore freedom, constitutionalism, and human rights, including gender equity. And the number 2 is end corruption and wasteful government expenditure. Now, you can also see that we are deliberate, even in terms of the campaign.
Believe me, if you look in every campaign manifesto, it is as flowery in language as NUP can be, or even better.
For us, we are very deliberate, okay, and we are sincere to our views and aspirations. Now, so all these challenges we are discussing now, constitutionalism, the rule of law, will be restored, because the current laws and constitution has various basic provisions that would save us of all this. The only challenge is institutions have been interrupted in their operations. There is now a lot of mixed up. Functions of the executive end up being done, or the judiciary end up being done by the executive. Functions of parliament or the legislature end up being done, supervised or controlled or influenced by the executive. Now, there's a lot of mix-up. We want independent institutions. And even when we speak about elections, we would have an independent electoral commission with independent an independent team to oversee elections. It is hardly to be seen whether Byabakama would stand in terms of the law and overrule or whatever is being done by the regime and NRM. But so far, Byabakama and his team, apart from nominating candidates, where they even had issues, has not been seen taking very deliberate steps. First of all, to tame security organs, the regime, the NRM. It's as if it's the NRM in charge of election instead of Byabakama as independent electoral commission. Now, when it comes to the process so far, it is a bit a mess. You recall from nomination, I would use the example of our candidate, our flag bearer, President Kyagulanyi Ssentamu Robert. Even towards his nomination, we saw the electoral commission attempting to deny him nomination and claiming that there were inadequate signatures. Later documents to resurface that actually he had been cleared in terms of the dates. They had cleared the certificates and the clearances for our candidate, but I think they were told not to clear him, just to avoid his nomination on day one. Now, you can see that the Electoral Commission appears not to be in charge of decisions which are very instrumental in the electoral process. Number two, when it comes to the campaign, our presidential candidate is known and nominated. When he went to launch his campaign manifesto in Jinja, and in the other regions we have traveled, we have received the obstruction from security operatives. A distance of 20 minutes, they want us to cover a distance of 10 hours to reach the venue. We have not heard of any curfew in this country or restrictions on using roads. But our candidate, President Kyagulanyi, is being restricted from accessing campaign venues. Well aware that he's a nominated candidate who is campaigning and traversing the country to mobilize and to share our manifesto with the people of various regions. Today he has been in Tororo. But you saw the blockade. He had to even use alternative means of a border to access the venue. It has happened in various places where he has been blocked, and he opted to use shortcuts and channels, borders, sometimes on foot, in full glare of the Electoral Commission. Where is Byabakama? Why would a presidential candidate be blocked from accessing a venue? We haven't seen the same security operatives blocking Mr. Museveni. For him, even when he abuses the electoral process as it would have been, but we haven't seen him being blocked anywhere. So it appears Byabakama either fears, because by virtue of his training as a judge and as a lawyer, he knows what must be done, and he knows what he must speak and what he must act on. But he has chosen and selected to be silent. Even when he comes out to speak, the only time I heard him speaking, logic, is when he was addressing issues of the RDCs. But even after speaking, he didn't write anything. He just spoke to the media on camera. He can deny it. Then he disappeared. So we want him to act officially. Because as a chairperson of the Electoral Commission, when they report to you that RDCs are doing this and this, write, even single them out. When it comes to investigation, the first line of investigation, the Electoral Commission has its own team to do its principal investigation. Not now claiming that let police investigate, when actually we are complaining that it is the police and the military who are blocking our candidate.
I know,
many times our candidate has been denied access to campaign venues, and as we speak now, he has even not had campaigns in some regions like Uganda, where he had to be on a particular date and was blocked by security operatives. He had to cancel his campaign. We haven't then yet secured an alternative day and time for him to go back to that particular area. And he has been very emphatic, our candidate, President Kyagulanyi, that if other candidates are allowed to address rallies in a particular region. Why deny us? Why deny him? Why deny NUP the right of holding a rally in a particular region? Okay. Where is the Abakama in all this? Okay. So we are discussing an electoral process which appears to be in favor of one side, and the umpire, the referee, the Electoral Commission, it remains silent. But still, we shall navigate our way.
All right. I know, Honorable Kwizera, you have been very distinct that you don't speak for NRM, which is true.
No, of course you say now.
But when he explains something like that, do you appreciate their concern? Do you think, has he exaggerated in your view?
Let us distinguish the mandates of constitutional bodies, and let us distinguish the provisions of different pieces of legislation. We have a Presidential Elections Act. Then we have also Electoral EC Act, and then we have also the Parliamentary Elections Act. My understanding of the issue you are asking was that now that the Parliament is supposed to be sitting and there is work of Parliament, how are we managing it? So I am not going to discuss the issue of the presidential campaigns because they are regulated by the Presidential Elections Act and the Electoral Commission mandate. Actually, when they are nominated, the presidential candidates are nominated, all candidates. Now, the Electoral Commission takes over. So they are charged to listen to all complaints. So I would advise that all complaints be given to them in writing. So that now you charge them that we communicated and you not take action. Back to what we are asking, that now Parliament is sitting, but now members of Parliament up country, there is any business going on. Although I'm not a spokesman for Parliament, I know that Parliament work is, every time there's Parliament sitting, either as committees or in a session. I know a number of committees are handling different business, like I have seen some committees doing work. Natural Resources Committee, they are doing work. I have been in public service and local government, they are doing some work. And the national economy also and finance, they are doing some work, because there are some loans being processed. And on Monday, I am informed that Parliament begins, I think Parliament will sit on Monday to do some legislation, to do some work. But all this one is in accordance with the law. What we would be looking at is that the campaign period, like now Parliament sits from this period of, say, October, as members of Parliament are preparing for nomination, up to the end of, let's say, 14th January. Yet within this period, that's when you have the budget, commencement of budget process is starting. And also you imagine that after the 14th January up to end of, say, mid-May, the whole budget process is going on. But what will be the motivation or the morale of the members of Parliament? Maybe who will have lost the elections to participate in to deliver on their mandate. So I think that based on what I can see, it is better that we have a shorter period of time to campaign. So that now the time that is left for campaign maybe is limited. And there is a relation, we distinguish presidential elections and the members of Parliament. They have time frames. So that when the presidents are campaigning, we can have their time different from members of Parliament. So that different organs of government are performing. Executive must be performing, and legislature must also be performing. Otherwise, there is an interference.
Honorable Muwada, what's your take on that?
Now, the legal framework that provides for institutions of government is the Constitution. So Parliament, as a legislature, exists and has a tenure. The law as it is, the law we have in this country, does not envisage a vacuum at any single time. And where there is a vacuum, the law provides for alternatives. as in terms of holding electoral process, the law as it is provides that every 5 years, Ugandans must have a vote to decide their destiny for the next 5 years, an electoral process. And it is rooted on the constitutional foundation that all power ordinarily must belong to the people, who must exercise it constitutionally. So the exercise of organizing electoral process does not complement other functions of existing institutions. It is independent in nature that we have an electoral process for every 5 years. And the timing of an election is also provided for within the law. That must be before expiry of a particular tenure. So the timing as it is within the legal framework. As to functionality of existing institution, the law doesn't look at individual participants, that because you're a member of parliament, because you're a minister, you are this, then you will influence when this election is held. The election is for Ugandans, not for the current leaders. Whether you choose to, when you choose to participate, there are some positions where the law requires you to resign before. Then there are those where you're not required to resign, but you must restrain from using resources of that particular office and the influence of that particular office in an electoral process.
Now,
coming to
I think Honorable Gahugu is saying maybe that needs to change. Maybe there should be some kind of
because changing it will be looking at individual office holders and bearers. Whereas in an electoral process, there are several other participants who are not necessarily within the current tenure or parliament or any institution. But needless to say, parliament functions through committees, plenary and other forums. I believe it is functional, save for plenary, which require quorum, a bigger quorum. But for committees, the quorum is a bit smaller. And it's a duty of those in charge of parliament to preside whenever there is a business to conduct. And parliament has a business committee. That is, for us, when someone is invited as members of parliament, we know our duty, and all members of parliament know their duty. I believe they will fulfill their duty to attend physically or virtually, because the rules now provide for virtual attendance. So whether they are far or near, whether you are out or present, we have physical presence and virtual attendance. So I believe parliament can function even if it was to call for plenary. But needless to say, it is not, its sitting should not be seen as an interruption to electoral process. That would be discussing electoral process in terms of members of parliament and for individual office holders. No, an electoral process is by virtue of the law and constitutional. The law provides that every 5 years, a tenure is 5 years, and the election must be conducted before expiry of any particular tenure to avoid a vacuum. So I believe it is the conduct of electoral process as of now is a matter of law, and it is timely.
But you think it doesn't need to be looked into for that, because the law is made by you? Because the current constitution, by members of parliament. Because by discussing changes in terms of the timing, you are looking at individual participants. But even in terms of the current participants, it's not only sitting members who are going to contest for election. Okay. There are several other public members. So an election is for the nation, not for members of parliament alone who are sitting. No. It's for the entire country. So, and the timing has to be legal and constitutional. The law regulates how sitting members and how sitting leaders and public servants participate in an electoral process. All right, you made your point.
There is making a law is okay to the process, and the laws are made and amended.
Yes.
But laws can be also tested. Laws can be tested by, you can subject them to legislative test when the executive brings the law. And even when the parliament has passed the law, it can go for a judicial test. But even when it is a very good law, it can go for public test. So what we are looking at is that this period when the parliament is not sitting, is parliament or is government, is the public, are the citizens being served in accordance with the law? Or are they meeting the expectations? An example is like, we have been having a countrywide strike, and the public expected this matter to be discussed in parliament. But the matter is not discussed. Why? Because this is an election period, and it might be taking longer. That's why I'm saying that laws are amended. But I believe what I'm saying, laws are amended.
Just to answer your
according. No, let me finish.
The challenge.
Laws are amended.
For information.
What I'm saying.
I'm giving you information.
What I'm saying laws are made and laws are amended to suit different situations. Because the law that was made in 1930 cannot be the law to apply today. Even now, the constitution that was made 30 years ago, the situation is that prevailed then cannot be the same now. That's why we need a constitutional what? Review commission to look at the conditions that were prevailing then. Are they still the same? Can we amend? That's what I'm looking at. If we want to deliver service to the citizens.
So what information?
Well, some of the concerns is raising, you know, the way Parliament takes decision is what we can interest ourselves in. But otherwise, in terms of the current strike, the teachers' strike, I recall the leader of opposition, the Right Honourable Muwada Nkunyingi, tabling it in Parliament in some of the previous sittings. It is, and we are yet to see government's response and reaction. Most of these concerns have been raised from time to time. Our challenge is on how government responds and choose to react on them. But otherwise, most of these have been presented, and that's why we are looking towards this electoral process, to envisaging a change and a realistic change, so that we can uproot the NRM regime from being at the helm and at the top of most of these organs, so we can now make improvements. Otherwise, in terms of decision making, many times the ruling party members come to say yes, and sometimes they are even summoned and cautioned to say yes, whether they agree or not. We have seen issues when we are processing issues to do with coffee, issues to do with so many other laws and parliamentary processes, where they are summoned and the following day they come just to say yes. It's not a question of sitting, it's a question of the substance. What is the output?
I like the way Honorable Muwada is very confident and looking at
but that's what can I make a comment on this one?
Oh, no? Okay.
You see, what motivates the people to vote may not necessarily be different manifestos. Because I have had a chance of looking at 4 of the manifestos which are there. The NRM, the NUP, the ANT, and the FDC. So now, there are people who are motivated by the regime change. Say, we must remove this regime. So there are people, after removing them, then what? So there are people who are going to vote against longevity. There are people who are going to vote because of the issues that are affecting different regions. So, even when he says there is a regime change, but these are Ugandans managing the same what? They will be the same Ugandans managing Uganda. So, because when another regime comes in, it will not bring people from the moon. They will be the same people here. So, what's important, what's primary, should be, are our laws acceptable? Are they okay? And then non-compliance, because some of these laws, as we are saying, we have sufficient laws, we have good laws, but is there any compliance? Are we implementing them? An example is the issue of civic education, the civic education contrary to vote education. Civic education is the role of the Uganda Human Rights Commission, and that's the constitutional mandate. But to the best of my knowledge and experience...
No, not Human Rights Commission. For information...
No, what I'm saying, let me tell you.
Just for information.
Uganda Human Rights Commission.
No. Don't cite a wrong provision. The law as it is mandates the Electoral Commission to undertake civic education, especially...
Please, let me explain. Let me do my work.
There's voter education.
There is voter education and there's civic education.
I
want to correct you. No, let me tell you. Don't interfere with what I'm saying. I want to tell you that there is civic education.
I need to correct you.
There is a civic education and the voter education. The mandate of Uganda Human Rights Commission include civic education. Yes. You can go and read your constitution. And the voter education is for Electoral Commission.
For your information, the Electoral Commission has also failed, because within the law, it must also develop policies and strategies on civic and voter education. They have not done it. When it comes to the civil space, as we speak now, since 2020, 2021, where civil societies were totally closed up in this country, we still lack the participation of civil society. Their funding has been curtailed by this regime, So the civil society organizations which were complementing that gap cannot now freely operate, and many have been either closed or they have closed up and went away. We have a challenge to do with civic education. When it comes to the civil space, civil societies have been totally silenced. When it comes to communication within the voters, the civilian population.
Do you think it's deliberate
now,
to have no civic
even
education?
the social media space has been closed up. Look at Facebook and other. Even as we move in our campaign trail, they have deployed jammers, and they are jamming internet and social media wherever our candidate, President Kyagulanyi, conducts a rally. You can hardly even make a live stream from those rallies now. They have employed jammers, and our party has written to the Electoral Commission. They remain silent. They remain silent or evasive. So all this is an attempt to not only defranchise, but as well to deny the people access to information. They have closed up civil society and also not done civic education, but they're also employing gadgets and avenues and efforts to ensure that even basic communication within the population cannot happen. That's why they are jamming internet wherever we move. So empowering the people. And when we talk about also the campaign, holding the campaigns, because we are discussing issues of democracy, even holding a campaign where we respect a presidential candidate or candidates for that matter, to address and reach out to the voters, to deliberate and pour out their manifesto to the voters. They're also making it very hard for some candidates, especially ours from NUP, to conduct campaigns. We are yet to see what will happen for parliamentary campaigns.
There is a feeling
but when it comes to presidential elections and presidential campaign, they are curtailing it. So we believe this is connivance.
There's a perception, Honorable Muwada, that so far the campaign seems to be going on relatively well.
That is a narrative of the regime and its sympathizers. As regards NUP and us, the law is very clear on how campaigns must be held. We have been blocked. Our campaign has been curtailed. They are deploying jammers, they are closing roads, and some instances they bring military vehicles, knocking NUP supporters wherever they find them with impunity. And needless to say, the armed forces, under our law, the military, that's the UPDF, the Uganda police or the police force, and the prison service must be non-partisan. But the way it is, and on look of things, we have seen videos where uniformed officers from police are campaigning for NRM. Right. We have seen scenarios, no, don't fear this. We have seen scenarios where the military and these security operatives appear partisan. And the way they are being deployed to block NUP. Recently, my party president posted a video of, for example, the NRM Secretary General in a military drill with what we call the supporters of NRM, military drill. We haven't seen the military and police acting, but we are seeing them chasing people dressed in NUP attire. Some of our supporters are still in detention with impunity, and the regime is not shy on that. With impunity, they continue even to hunt those. They have arrested most of the security details of President Kyagulanyi and his friends, his sympathizers, party members. They continue to arrest and kidnap. We are, especially for NUP. Right. You want to call it a normal electoral process? Okay. So it is this guys to tell you that it's normal. You have made your point. It is just this guys, and we still demand that we must be allowed. We must be allowed to campaign and exist as a party and campaign on our ideologies.
You have made your point. I don't know whether Honorable Kwizera would want to respond to that, but those are the things you have seen.
Our
time is almost out.
I want to read this provision of the Uganda Human Rights Commission, which says that, among others, to formulate, implement, and oversee programs intended to inculcate in the citizens of Uganda awareness of civic responsibilities and appreciation of their rights and obligations as free people.
Yeah, but looks like there has been a deliberate move to do away with civic education. So
that's what I'm saying.
Civic competence in Uganda.
It is the mandate, it is the duty and responsibility of government and its agencies to do that mandate. And we are saying failure to do it cannot be condoned.
Okay, gentlemen, I want to thank you. Our time is almost out, but probably we cannot go out without remembering an iconic figure in East Africa, the passing on of Raila Amolo Odinga. What do you remember of this man? And your concluding remark, Honorable Muwada?
Well, to the people of Kenya, the people of East Africa, and the people of the world, and Africa as a continent, we have lost an icon of democracy who has been loved by his own people. He has stood to defend democratic values and governance, not only in Kenya, but on the African continent. We have lost a gentleman, a father, and a friend to many. It is a sad moment, but unfortunately, he was fighting for a better Kenya. At the time of his passing away, he had been flown to India, meaning Kenya hasn't still realized that fabric of the basic establishment that would allow its nationals to receive every treatment within Kenya. And it remains a concern. And it's the same experience we have as a country. In Uganda here, most of our leaders are pronounced dead abroad. We want to fight and strive and learn from him that we strive for a country where we have service delivered and services brought within our countries, closer to the people, affordable services, so that if it is death, let it be as natural as it ought to be. But we sympathize and we send sympathies to the people of Kenya. It is a saddening moment. I could see the people crying. It's very unfortunate that they have lost an icon, but his ideas remain. And for the people of Uganda, we are in an electoral process. It is 2025, we are going for 2026 election. As NUP, we enter this as a protest vote. We want a new Uganda now. We call upon the people of Uganda to realize that the country belongs to you and your vote matters. Go and vote. Let's participate in this process. Amidst the suppression, amidst the diversions, let's remain focused. For us as NUP, our symbol is an umbrella. To my people of Kyadondo East constituency, I still present myself as one of your own to represent you in Parliament of Uganda. I'll continue amplifying the views and aspirations we stand for as people of Kyadondo East in our 9 parishes. And as Muwada Nkunyingi, I implore you, vote the umbrella. Vote the umbrella. I come on the National Unity Platform ticket, and I'm nominating next week, inshallah, on 23rd.
All right, Honorable Kwizera Ogahugu.
Of course, the passing on of Raila is a loss to the East African community, because he had added value to, first of all, to his family. He added value to his community. He added value to Kenya and East Africa. So we shall lose him as a citizen of his good conduct and a role model. So we feel for Kenyans, and we may his soul rest in peace.
Honorable Kwizera Eddie Wagahugu, thank you so much. Honorable Muwada Nkunyingi, thank you so much for the time you've given us, for your submissions, for also adding value to this platform. And for you, the viewer, I want to thank you for the privilege of your company you've given us. And we are going to electoral season. Of course, you're going to be electing the leaders of your choice and the parties of your choice. Let's do this in peace. Good night, and God bless Uganda.